Use algebra to solve this equation. So sometimes we're going to find in questions that they prescribe which way you have to solve this. Okay, this would be a non-calculator question if it came up on your exam. They want you to use algebra. Sometimes they say that on calculator questions so that you don't just go to your graphing calculator, put something in y1, put something in y2, find out where they intersect, and you're done. So we want to use algebra to solve this. If you have something squared, that makes it a quadratic. That should open up a bunch of like, oh, I've solved quadratics in the past. Sometimes I have to factor. Sometimes I just get the thing that's squared by itself and square root both sides. Can you see that this is one where you could get the co-squared by itself, and then you could square root both sides? So if I divide both sides by 2, and then square root both sides, I'm going to get cos of x equals, and what did I forget? Plus or minus. Good. And this is where this is a good question because it's non-calculator, and since it's non-calculator, that means that you should get a value that's either not possible or a value that's on your unit circle. Do you recognize this value?
Yeah.
What family? Okay, so I heard pi over 6, I heard pi over 4, I heard pi over 3. Okay, it's a tricky one because of the square root. So in fact, the way that it's written right now, we never wrote a square root of a half on our unit circle. We had it in a different form. We had it as root 2 over 2. So the question is, can you quickly recognize that this is the same as root 2 over 2? Or what do you have to do to it to manipulate it? Now, when you have a square root of a fraction, that's the same as the square root of the top over the square root of the bottom. And the square root of 1, well, that's equal to 1. So I could change this to 1 over the square root of 2. But we didn't write 1 over the square root of 2 when we did our unit circle because we rationalized our denominator. We multiplied by the square root of 2 over 2 to simplify this. And so when you're answering questions, you don't need to rationalize. You don't need to simplify fractions because they assume you know how to do that. How do they check if that assumption is correct? Questions like this, where through your work, you had to do some manipulations to get it to look like what you recognize. Okay? It's not a bad idea to recognize the 1 over square root of 2. I mean, that's how we got it from our special triangle to begin with. I don't know if you remember when we drew our 45-degree triangle. Just a reminder. We set both of these sides as 1, and then a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We got root 2. So from that triangle, you can see that cos being adjacent over hypotenuse would be 1 over root 2. But we rationalized it when we put it on our unit circle. So now that we have this question is in degrees. So we'll write our answer in degrees. What family is this? Pi over 4, but in degrees, that would be 45 degrees. And because of the plus or minus, you will have all 4 quadrants. The last thing, I mean, we get into the habit, right? We've sort of developed this habit that we're always solving once around the circle from 0 to 2 pi or from 0 to 360 degrees in the positive direction. But every time you finish a question, because we've got in that habit, we're going to check what was the original domain. In this case, oh good, it was between 0 and 360. But sometimes they give us a different domain, and then we would have to decide which of our answers do we have to take out, what answers will we have to add. In this case, we're finished. So for the questions on this one, and I do want you to turn, it's going to be 5 and 11. I do want you to turn to number 5 right now because I want to change the wording on it just a bit. So let's go to number 5. Okay, things that I want you to do. I want you to put a line through that, and instead write solve for x, 0 less than x less than 2 pi. And then you can ignore those. Those will be 2 of the answers that you're going to find, but I want you to figure it out just solving. So you should get 7 pi over 6, and you should get pi over 3, which means that you should be able to get some answers without your calculator. Part B will also have some answers that you'll need to use your calculator as well. So change number 5 to say solve for x rather than verify. When you have a verify question, all that means is you have to plug it in to see if it works. And in this one, I want you to practice solving.